Organisational culture is really the glue that holds asset management together in any organisation. We really want to be looking at how do we embed a culture that supports the organisation's vision, mission, asset objectives, asset management objectives, organisational objectives, encouraging behaviours that align with good stewardship of assets, collaboration, and of course continuous improvement underpinning plan, do, check and act. Moving away from more reactive style behavior to and silo-based practices, and moving towards more of a unified proactive culture, a can-do culture, instead of I can't do because of, I can do if I had this. Reinforcing those values through leadership, measurement, recognition systems. If we look at alignment, value, and leadership as the three principles as per ISO 55000, it can be actually simplified. And then, of course, embracing that different diversity, equity, inclusion, and of course, lifelong learning that everyone really is entitled to. One of the first risks and a significant risk we face is the misalignment of culture. The real risk here is, of course, existing culture focuses on the short term fixes, working in silos rather than beyond the horizon in terms of long term asset value. We can remedy that by, of course, promoting behaviours that support stewardship and collaboration across functions. But as you'll see in this module here, the organisational culture is very much linked back to asset management leadership. When we think about leadership influence, we need to think about leadership not only empowering, but also supporting and enabling. Leaders sometimes run the risk of contradicting, i.e., talking the talk, not walking the walk. And those cultural values that are being promoted are simply lip service. Whether you are at the senior level of an organisation or even working almost solo or in a smaller team, we need to get leaders to role model desired behaviours consistently. I think in today's workplace that's becoming more of the norms, but we still have got detractors. And when you think of the culture, if you've got an external workforce with, say, contingent labour working with an internal workforce, which have got a longer term vested interest in an organisation, that leadership influence will be critical. Resistance to cultural change in the context of any organisation. There is a real risk that people see new expectations around culture, behaviours, values, etc., as unrealistic or relevant to them. I think one such perspective on change, is that people feel that change is being done to them as opposed to being done to the organisation around them. That is one of the first things we need to realise as leaders in change. But a way through this, of course, is storytelling. Being empathetic to say that in this person's role, this is how they can contribute, how their life can be improved day to day, how the organisation can benefit from it, and it becomes bidirectional or mutually supportive. And we need to recognise and reinforce those new norms. But again, it comes back to that leadership. We need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Under the guise of measuring and rewarding behaviours, there's a real risk that performance systems reward the wrong behaviours. And when we talk about performance systems, that could be cash bonuses or incentives for upper management, and therefore they're interested or biased towards one outcome, whereas the rest of the workforce might be on salary and wages. They don't have that benefit. So therefore that performance system, there's tension between the organisation already. Speed over safety, get it done quickly, urgently, and then kind of ignoring the safety is another prime example where we need to shift the way we model those behaviours. But one such way around it is to align KPIs and initiatives or incentives with desired cultural outcomes. Irrespective if someone in the upper echelon of the organisation is receiving a cash bonus versus someone who might not have the opportunity to do so, the trick here is to make sure that those cultural KPIs are consistent in all stakeholders within the organisation, and therefore you create synergy, you don't create disparity amongst the workforce. A silo mentality can be brought around by many different perspectives or reasons, if you like. It could be driven by budget to a particular team. So that manager or supervisor protects the team by way of spend. There can be a silo mentality in terms of, I like to control the outcomes of the organization. I'm in a compliance area of the business, therefore seen as the policeman, etc. From an organizational culture, we need to remind everyone that we're all in this together as one system. The coordinated activity of an organization to realize value from assets is the backbone to this whole conversation. But the risk is, of course, teams protecting their own interest rather than collaborate. I do it my way. If anyone else wants to change, they can change. I'm just going to get on and do the job. We need to get around that by encouraging cross-functional projects, shared accountability, a little bit of an oxymoron, but shared accountability means that you can share the prize when you get it right, when you actually deliver value to the organization, not just responsibility to the outcome. Diversity and inclusion might spring up the concept of interracial relationships, different languages coming together. But diversity can be as simple as technical people and non-technical people working together, creating that inclusion. The real risk here is failure to embrace those diverse perspectives. It can weaken decision-making and, of course, innovation. I've seen many a time you have all the technical subject matter experts in the room talking about the technical, but in absence of the overarching outcome that that technical decision is trying to seek, bringing in some business people who aren't so technical can ask sometimes the most simplest question and get a better result. So getting around this, we want to embed that inclusive practices, whether it's from recruitment, the entire life cycle of an employer or worker, leadership development, but also getting people to becoming more self-aware. And that could also be done with activities such as 360s and leadership tools. The key alignment areas back to ISO 55001, sections 5.1, leadership and commitment. That would be an obvious one. The second one, not so obvious, but really important, is section 7.3, awareness. During the review and rewrite of the 2024 edition, we actually spent a lot of time in the awareness topic and the subgroup that had led up leadership, because awareness isn't just you're aware of a policy or you're aware of asset management as a whole. Awareness goes right down through to the center of, I understand this organization, asset management and how that serves the organization, and of course, my role in asset management. So in summary, organizational culture determines how people think and act when managing assets, and whether they actually see asset management as adding real value. But what we can do from a leadership perspective is if we can connect the organization to assets, asset management, and the asset management system, organizational culture will start to pull itself towards the benefits of asset management as opposed to seeing it as just an activity or a transaction.